Ken, I think that people who have been watching us for almost a year now have come to recognize that there's things that you and I agree upon, there's things that you and I disagree upon, and that's one of the things that makes this show great. But I think we both agree in that we totally distrust the FBI. How are you, Ken?
I'm doing well, and yeah, we definitely agree on that. And yeah, I'm fired up. But this should be a good one.
You're looking well, and happy Veterans Day to you. I don't know. I know you're not a veteran, but perhaps veterans in the family. And we've been looking at you. You actually have been doing a wonderful deep dive. I want to encourage people to follow you on X at JD underscore cashless. If people aren't already doing that, you did something a little bit unusual. You did a sort of a solo video the other day on your other X. You're also the editor, of course, of headlineusa.com. And you put out a video going through a lot of the details. We got to be careful here because you said this very well. We're not yet sure if this is correct or incorrect, this January 6th pipe bomber information. Why don't you give us the background, tell everybody what it is that you were talking about. And I also want to remind people to subscribe to Ken, follow him on Substack at substack.com/ at Ken Silva. And also tell us about the book, Ken. People can still get the book, right?
Yeah, the book. Hopefully, it'll be out by the end of the year. It's in the final editing stages. We're actually doing the physical layout right now, the pagination, and it's we don't know quite the title, but it's on the assassination attempts against Donald Trump. We take chapter one's kind of a minute by minute blow through Butler. We go through the planning leading up to that, the aftermath. We've got a chapter on Ryan Ruth, a chapter on all the fallacies that the allegations that Iran was behind this. We go into the bizarre world of Discord, and we kind of wrap it up at the end. And we have a chapter on Thomas Crooks too. So yeah, and anybody that wants to become a paid subscriber to my Substack, it's not, I haven't been active. The Substack looks pretty sad right now, but I will send a signed copy to anyone who wants to become a sponsor.
It's a great perk. We should get back in touch with Matthew. Has he done more with the Panic in Bethel Park? That was a great episode, and thanks for putting that together.
Absolutely. Yeah, he is working on episode 2 now, and he's told me, a couple things off the record that are pretty interesting. He's made some contacts with some people, but I don't want to, give it away before he's ready to publish something. So hopefully he'll have that early in 2026, I think is what he told me.
Right. Okay, great. Well, so take us through this FBI pipe bomber thing because, again, I think it's important to consider the source. And this pipe bomber story, it's been around really since January 6th. And I think everybody suspects that it's somebody tied to the FBI. Of course, we saw this disparate treatment of, patriots who were in some cases led into the building by the cops versus people like Ray Epps and everything. What is it that we know? What do we suspect? You did a great breakdown of this sort of questionable reporting.
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably know some of the drama that happened over the weekend where Blaze Media and reporter Steve Baker published a story purporting to solve the case of the January 5th and 6th pipe bombs. And I guess before I go into their story, for anybody, it is almost a 5-year-old case. So there might be some people who actually even forget because the mainstream media didn't pay attention to this at all. They all focused on the riot, but this is like the only actual act of real terrorism connected to that event. And what we believe is that a pipe bomber placed devices outside the RNC or DNC either the night of January 5th or shortly before the riot happened. Um, the FBI says it happened the night before, but it would be odd because those devices sat there for like over 12 hours. And even though there were Capitol Police and even Secret Service swept the DNC, they didn't find these bombs. Kamala Harris, her convoy, entered the DNC while the bomb was still there, and the Secret Service somehow missed it. And then this lady named Carlin Younger found the one outside the RNC around, I think it's around noon on January 6th. Of course, Younger's got an interesting background of herself. She was a former counterterrorism analyst, and she was working for some telecoms company at the time that she found it. And then maybe like a half an hour later, it was a plainclothes Capitol police officer who found the one outside of the DNC. So, there's been a lot of questions about this for years. And, Blaze publishes an expose purporting to identify the suspect as a Capitol police officer who later went to work for the CIA. I don't think we should name her because I don't think the evidence is strong enough and there are, potential libel issues here. But basically what they did is somehow they've had access to gait recognition software, and they matched one of the officers who had been firing non-lethal projections into the crowd during the protest turned riot. And
let me stop you for a second, Ken. Yeah. Can I stop you there? So gait recognition, I think a lot of people hear that, and you hear any kind of recognition, and people are like, oh, a computer must have been involved. This is AI. It's got to be correct. But isn't it correct that gait recognition, it has been used as evidence in court, but it's not like fingerprints or DNA. It's a sort of a not that fully standardized or even necessarily well-developed science, right? I mean, what is this gait recognition?
Yeah, that's my understanding. It's basically an analysis of how somebody walks. So, it's a fancy way to say that this Capitol police officer that they saw on January 6th walks almost identically to the person seen on FBI surveillance, the footage that the FBI released of the person who probably placed the bombs the night of the 5th. As you say, it's not an exact science. I think even Blaze admitted that there was about a 96% match. I think if you took any sample of 1,000 people, you'd probably get a couple that have a 96% match. I've heard people counter that by saying, oh, well, that's how they identified Osama bin Laden when he was hiding in Pakistan. And they did that from a satellite video. Oh. So it actually is good.
That was definitely him.
Well, I think we could get into all kinds of, I think Seymour Hersh even reported that they already knew Osama was there for years and they kind of took him out just at an opportune time.
Come on. I don't think he was in Pakistan. I think
let's assuming that the story is correct.
Let's
remember that Osama bin Laden was like 6'5". And how many 6'5" guys? So it would be easier for the software to recognize him is what I'm saying versus how many people are 5'7". So, putting that aside, they have this gait recognition software. They say it's a 98% match to this Capitol police officer. And then they coupled that with statements made by former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, who was on, still in the FBI after January 6th. And he says that he was assigned to a surveillance team that went to the house or the apartment or condo complex of a potential pipe bomb suspect. And apparently they found that the person Kyle was surveilling lived right next door to the suspect that Blazed named, which is a quite bizarre coincidence. And, we've discussed Seraphin before. He kind of pulls stuff out of his ass all the time. But this, I have, we pretty much verified that he's telling the truth here because he's been telling the same story for years. And he says that they tracked the suspect because he used like a Metro rail card that belonged to some civilian in the Air Force. And then they were surveilling the civilian's house, apparently. And when he posted a picture of the house, there were open source researchers that actually found out exactly where the house was and who lives there. And it is a civilian in the Air Force. So I think that part of the story is true.
But let me just ask you something here, because you've just said a lot. Kyle Seraphin, I think we both have a lot of questions about. You've pointed out that he's being sued now by is her name Wilkinson, the girl who's dating Kash Patel? There's a lot of questions about Kyle Seraphin.
Kyle Seraphin, he has made a number of blunders. Like I've been following him for a while because he's an FBI whistleblower. Covering the FBI is my beat. But we kind of clashed initially when he told this story about the surveillance of this pipe bomb suspect. It was actually our mutual friend, Free State Will, raised the question like, how are you allowed to speak about this publicly? Even though you got fired from the Bureau, wouldn't this be disclosing information about an active investigation? Don't you have a non disclosure? Like, why are you free to talk about this? And in response, Seraphin, his response was kind of convoluted to me. I couldn't really tell you why he can't be prosecuted for that. And he ended up blocking Will. And this was like in 2023, early 2023. At that time, I never had beef with Kyle, but we really started to clash when I started reporting on these 764 satanic groups. And he basically said it was fake and this is all the satanic panic. And he started smearing my friend BX, pretty much calling her like an internet floozy, which is like exact
Crazy.
opposite of what she is. She like her work is legit. So it was really bizarre his behavior there, and it kind of escalated from then. But
Well, let me stop you there for a second because this is important points that you're raising. Kyle Seraphin. So, okay, even if he wasn't in the FBI, but he was. We can't say even if he wasn't because he was. It's an excellent question. Why is he A, allowed to report on this contractually without being sued? B, we see that the FBI can stop anybody from doing anything they don't like through a variety of means. They could come right to your house, arrest you for whatever kind of made up crap, put you through a process for years and years, like all the people, including Free State Will. William Pope was put through the ringer for literally being directed into the building by the cops. I've been sued for the past 9 years by lunatics who appear to be FBI adjacent to me. It seems to be my opinion, purely my opinion. It seems to me that anybody who claims to be ex-FBI, ex-CIA, I just don't believe anything they say. I think if someone was saying anything that the FBI or CIA did not want them to say, they would be in jail, in court, or in a box underground. Yet Kyle Seraphin is running his mouth. To what extent can we surmise if this is not just smoke and noise with different factions in the FBI? I mean, maybe Kyle Seraphin was loyal to James Comey, Christopher Wray. Maybe there were warring factions in those guys' FBI. Now we've got, Dan Bongino and Kash Patel in there. But it's not like there's this one banner of FBI and everybody. It's like The Sopranos, right? Big Pussy turns at some point and they have to take him on a fishing trip.
Yeah. Yeah. And there have been a lot of, suggestions that he might still be playing for the other team or something like that. I'm of the opinion that he's just an idiot shock jock and very impulsive. Um, uh, I think he does get information from some former agents or from some current agents.
Right.
Because some of what he says is actually accurate. I mean, he's revealed that like a FBI agent in Philadelphia who shot and killed a dog with her service weapon in the middle of the city later was promoted. He revealed that another FBI applicant had been a heroin addict and he was still hired.
Whoa.
He revealed some information about the Patriot Front case in Idaho, where they wanted to execute search warrants on the Patriot Front's phones. And actually, there was an FBI agent that resisted that because they said, well, this isn't a federal case. And, we're kind of just infringing on their rights. And all those stories came from Seraphin and they were all true. So he does seem to be getting information from inside the Bureau. Some of it's good, but, he's not an actual whistleblower. He was, I think, suspended for refusing to take the vaccine. And then he was later fired for like insubordination. And now he runs an online radio show where he kind of just spouts off his mouth. And I think that might be where he's kind of gone wrong, is like he's just trying to say provocative things every day to get an audience. And He's burned a lot of bridges and kind of beclowned himself, I would argue.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I mean, my skepticism about him is that he seems to be serving a purpose. I mean, I'm not denying the things that you're saying that he blew the whistle on or whatever, but look, there's a number of reasons why he could have done that. Maybe he is an animal lover and didn't like. I mean, it's pretty crazy that some FBI agent shot a dog. Like, that's bad for sure. The heroin stuff. I mean, again, I don't know. It's the FBI is a complicated thing, and I think people more and more are starting to realize that, and we got to keep diving into this. So let's get back to the pipe bomber aspect of it, because the story really sort of broke as this huge bombshell. And then the other thing that I noticed was there's a lot of kind of like, people will say, oh yeah, but this is like anti-Trump or anti-MAGA or whatever. But that's precisely it. I think a lot of these, again, my opinion, I think a lot of these things are really just intended to sow chaos. So isn't it true, Ken, that there is some value for people who would want to do that in putting out a story like this Steve Baker story and then having a counter Steve Baker like Will Sommer, who's been with, I think, the Daily Beast and stupid things like that, who's now saying, oh, pro-Trump media went wild for a bombshell expose that is really just a foolish bunch of nonsense. Don't they kind of want to do this, make any kind of pro-Trump media look stupid?
And that's really my concern here. I actually think the Blaze report is pretty interesting and they might be onto something, but because they've done this so sloppily and they don't have any kind of smoking gun evidence and they name this lady, it's almost like they set a straw man up that could be now knocked down and everybody will say, oh, it's debunked. The Fedsurrection narrative is debunked.
Right.
And you guys are all tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. Whether it's intentional or just really sloppy journalism, I can't say. I do think, they're really, Steve Baker and them are really conservative MAGA people. Some of their decisions are really inexplicable here. Although I will say, I've been paying pretty close attention. I watched Kyle's show yesterday, and he suggested that some sort of whistleblower has come out of the woodwork. And now if you follow an FBI agent named Phil Kennedy, he's been kind of having these cryptic tweets like, oh, the story's been confirmed. We're going to take our victory lap very soon. So maybe the story did spark some type of whistleblower disclosure that's now going to confirm and tie everything together. I haven't seen anything, but that's why, I'm still very agnostic about this. I'm only commenting on the journalism methodology, which so far I've found to be, lacking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ken, I've known you for a little while, and I know you put extra special importance on any kind of reporting from somebody with the glowing Joe Biden eyes. That's always a good sign. I mean, aren't these guys just really playing games with all of us? The thing with Kyle Seraphin is he's a former FBI agent. He's getting sued left and right. He should be aware of, I get it, what you're saying, that he's trying to be sensational, but he doesn't want to spend all his money on lawyers. He's just appeared by counsel in the case Wilkins v. Seraphin. Wilkins is now suing somebody else, Elijah Schaefer. So again, whenever I see these sort of people who I know are connected to lawfare, and we'll get more into these cases. I know you've been following the docket. When we're done here on X and YouTube and everything, people are going to be able to join us on substack.com/@KenSilva, also on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We'll have a sponsor exclusive in-depth. We'll go into more detail about those cases. But I tell you, Ken, anytime I see these FBI on FBI lawsuits, one of the primary things in lawfare is controlling both sides of the caption. And I'm going to want to look at some of those lawsuits with you and talk about some of the people who are involved and what I know from my 9 years of being dragged through the lawfare FBI nonsense regime, and talk about what might actually be going on in between the lines of some of those filings. But I haven't really followed this guy, Phil Kennedy, too much. I mean, again, he's another, we're saying FBI, ex-FBI. I don't know. I don't know. Fear is an orphan. Courage has 1,000 fathers. I guess so. We'll see. I'm not sure what's going. Has the woman who they've accused said anything at all? Has the Capitol Police responded or anybody like that?
Well, that actually reminds me. One of the funniest things about this is Kyle Seraphin was like on Alex Jones' show Friday night saying, "Oh, they might kill her. She might be dead by Monday." And we have no indication that that's the case. Far from it. I'm hearing rumblings that she's probably preparing a lawsuit. So we haven't heard from her.
Who
We
might kill
haven't.
her? Isn't that crazy to say? Isn't he inciting violence? I mean, how is this guy allowed to do all this stuff?
He was implying that, like, oh, the CIA is going to kill her to cover its tracks or something like that. Like, she's the fall person. Like, this is a big deep state thing.
You've just reminded me what I wanted to ask you because you also pointed out the detail that this person that they've pointed to, who they allege is a suspect, has gone to work for the CIA. And it was very strange to me because you pointed out that Steve Baker didn't contact the CIA to ask them, but yet some spokesperson from the CIA reached out to them. Now, my reaction was contacting the CIA to ask them for a comment about an employee is a little bit of a waste of time because they're supposedly never going to confirm or deny. What do you think that says that they said, oh yeah, she works for us, but she works in this capacity, not that capacity? Isn't that weird in and of itself?
It is weird, and like I said, I've been watching Kyle Seraphin's show, and he says that, well, if you get hired security, it's pretty much the same role, the same classification. You could either be put on campus security, or you could actually be on a detail for an official, like John Ratcliffe. But Blaze did report that she was on the director's detail, and the CIA came out and said, no, she's just kind of guarding the building. So the significance of that is unclear, but I think it does speak to the fact that they didn't reach out to the CIA. And yeah, I publish like 3 or 4 stories a day covering the news. I usually don't reach out to the FBI or CIA if it's like a typical story that's already in the news. But I would think for something this explosive that they would have contacted all parties. And more egregiously, it doesn't seem like they contacted the person that they named as the suspect. They've got one line in there about a Blaze editor-in-chief was by her house Friday night and got pulled over by the cops because her name had already been leaked. It was like already all over Twitter by Friday afternoon, so I'm sure she had the cops protecting her because of death threats. And so they pull over this Blaze editor-in-chief, and they said he was observing the house, but it's not illegal. Like he could have come up and knocked on the door. And then they published the story like 5 hours later. So it just seems rushed. And again, it's like they didn't take all the proper steps that you would for a story of this importance.
Well, it certainly put a lot of attention on the Blaze. Everybody's been talking about it and looking at it. You know, before we head over to our sponsor exclusive segment, why don't you fill us in on some of the other stories you've been covering on headlineusa.com?
Yeah, so a lot of January 6th news has been coming out. We'll see Thomas Massey is still investigating our friend Ray Epps, which is good. He has questions about why, and this is actually a story that I'm pretty sure I was the guy that broke this, that the FBI initially closed its investigation into him by July 2021. And it wasn't until like Revolver News and Massey and some other people started asking questions, and I think 2022 or late 2021, that they reopened the case. They eventually charged him with 1 misdemeanor, and he got a year of probation. This is the guy who infamously, the night of January 5th, was saying, "Oh, we got to go into the Capitol," and then everybody starts chanting "Fed, Fed, Fed" because he's an obvious provocateur. The next day, he was part of this group that was carrying a giant sign that they kind of shoved into a group of police officers. So the DOJ described his activities as felonious, but he got off very, very lightly. The New York Times published a story about how he is a victim of MAGA conspiracies because everybody thinks he's a Fed. The January 6th committee even treated him lightly. And so this is like, he could be one of the smoking guns of the Fedsurrection theory. And our guy, our champion, or my champion, Thomas Massey, is still asking questions about it. He wrote the FBI a letter last month seeking documents about its decisions on investigating him or the lack of investigation. And, I'm sure Massey's been stonewalled, but at least he's trying a little bit.
Yeah, and something I find very strange, Ken. I know how it seems for me to be coming back to evidence that I developed, but this is unique evidence. It is firsthand evidence. I am the only person who recorded this and identified it. And the thing that's so strange to me is this guy in the foreground with the Trump thing and the orange do-rag is so incredibly suspicious. He is now known to be John Lee Riches, who is a convicted fraudster. He's referred to on Wikipedia as the most litigious man in the world. I guess they haven't investigated George Webb's brother. But the point is, this is a guy who is known to the Department of Justice. He's been prosecuted. He's got, I believe, plea arrangements that have, he's been convicted, so he's interacted with them. Then we've got this fat guy who I first ran into at Mac's Pub in Staten Island, which was a questionable set of circumstances. He's doing hand signals. The guy on the bicycle who's wearing a similar, mask, scarf combination as John Lee Riches, he's recording the whole thing. Those two guys came over to myself and Charles Ortel after this, and Ray Epps walks right by, yet nobody. Now, Massey's busy, I get it, he's in Congress, but nobody, Darren Beattie, Revolver News, I've tweeted this thing all over the place. And it's not that I think that I'm important, but some of these tweets have gotten hundreds of thousands of views, millions of views. How could people who are investigating January 6th not have seen this, not be curious about this? I just wonder if anyone other than, you, me, William Pope, like there are people who are definitely trying to get to the bottom of it, but it doesn't really seem like anybody who can do anything about it. We're out of time here. I'll have you answer that question on the other side. People can join us on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Of course, it'll also be on substack.com/